Hey, what's up guys? Today, I'll show you a horror thriller film, Mary. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with two children and a woman screaming. Then a ship catches on fire in the middle of the ocean, plumes of smoke reaching up to the sky. The woman, Sarah, is rescued. With a blanket wrapped around her and a red bruise forming on her forehead, she stares into the sea with anguished eyes. She is taken to the Coast Guard headquarters and brought into a cold interview room. A detective walks in and introduces herself to Sarah. Sarah demands to know where her daughters are, and the detective assures her that they're safe somewhere in the headquarters. But first, Sarah needs to tell her what really happened on the ship. Sarah slowly begins to speak, saying that evil resided on that boat. 4 months ago, an abandoned sailboat was found off the coast of Georgia. It had an austere figure of a woman carved on the bow, and the boat's name, Mary, was painted on the side. There was no one on board when the Coast Guard officers checked it. It hadn't been occupied for a long time, and dust was everywhere. Suddenly, a banging sound came from inside a locked cupboard. The Coast Guard officers slowly opened it, and an unknown entity flew out and attacked them. Sarah's husband, David, was a renowned captain in Florida who regularly operated boat tours. But he dreamed of owning a boat someday, so he and his family could have a better life. He got a tip that a fishing boat was going to be auctioned, so he went to look at it. But his attention was stolen by the same recovered sailboat from earlier and was entranced by it. At their home, Sarah's eldest daughter, Lindsay, wanted to get a tattoo, but her mother wasn't having any of it. On the other hand, her youngest daughter, Mary, was worried about her wailing baby tooth. Sarah assured her that the tooth would come out soon. She then got a call from her husband, who told her about the marvelous boat he saw at the auction lot. Sarah and her daughters drove down to see the sailboat for themselves. Mary was excited when she found out that she and the boat shared the same name. She was disappointed that David went ahead and bought the more expensive sailboat because they were already financially strapped enough as it is. But David explained that they could use the sailboat to travel and have it chartered for profit. Sarah was still unconvinced and left the boat to get some fresh air. She came back after a while, and David apologized for not consulting her first before buying the boat. He was drawn to the boat in an unexplainable way, and he believed that the boat was their shot to a more financially stable life. The couple reconciled and prepared themselves for the long journey of renovating the old boat. After they fixed it up, the family scheduled a test run. The night before, they all gathered on the deck to celebrate their new adventure. Joining them was Lindsay's boyfriend, who worked for David, and David's friend Mike. They talked about the ship's mysterious past and wondered how it ended up abandoned. David shrugged off the ghost story and stood up to toast his family and friends, who helped him achieve his dream. But in the middle of his speech, he got distracted by the carved figure on the boat. Sarah then invited everyone for a family picture in front of the boat. The boyfriend offered to take the picture, but when he pressed the camera, he was shocked by a ghostly white shape suddenly appearing in the picture. However, when David looked at the picture, it was fine. The boyfriend was still shaken by what he saw. Later that night, Sarah tucked Mary into bed in her tiny room in the boat. She sang a lullaby, but suddenly saw a scary skeleton in the corner. However, it turned out to be just a dream, and Sarah woke up with a start the next morning. David was already up and excited for his first day as the captain of his own boat. The boat was successfully launched out into the open sea. Everyone was happy and starting to believe in David's dream too. They continued to sail around Florida. One day, the boyfriend stared at the carved figure and got an unsettling feeling. Sarah was astonished to discover that Mary's bedroom door was locked. She forced it open and saw that the walls were decorated with the child's drawings, depicting their happy family and the boat. She also saw one discarded drawing of a black figure and was puzzled by it. That night, David had a nightmare about a ghostly woman. He woke up and realized that the boat was moving. He got up from the bed and walked out onto the deck with Sarah. They saw one of the boat's ropes tied into a hangman's knot. They then noticed the boyfriend standing shirtless near the bow. David asked him why he raised the anchor. He had a strange look on his face when he answered that someone wanted them to keep going. The boyfriend swiveled around, and they saw that he was holding a bloody knife and had carved his chest. He then began to attack David like a wild animal. Fortunately, the husband and wife were able to hold him down. Back in the interview room, Sarah tells the detective that the boyfriend never recovered from that strange episode, and they left him behind in one of the ports they docked in. She had agonized over the decision to leave him behind, but David was firm that having him around was not safe for his daughters. They did not tell the children the whole truth about the night that the boyfriend went crazy. Lindsay was angry that they kicked him out, and she got into a fight with Sarah. In the middle of their bickering, she brought up the fact that Sarah cheated on David, then left the room. Sarah was saddened by her daughter's hurtful remarks. Mike comforted her and shared that he believed that she and David truly love each other and will make things work despite the affair that had happened. In that moment of shared affection, they held hands and David saw them. In the present day, the detective questions Sarah about Mike and whether or not they had feelings for each other. She denies it and says that she only cheated once. They then talk about how Mary was the first to be affected in the family by the dark entity. Sarah explains that Mary's age and vulnerability made her easy prey for the malevolent spirit, and that is why she had to vanquish it. But the detective does not believe her story and threatens Sarah that she can be charged with murder if she does not start making sense soon. The detective leaves the room, and Sarah ominously looks at the CCTV camera. In a flashback, one man on the boat, Sarah heard a child laughing. She thought it was Mary, and she looked for her daughter inside their room. The bedspread looked like someone had lain on it, and there was also a wet footprint on the floor. Based on the direction of the footprint, Mary was hiding inside the cupboard by the bed. Sarah opened it and called for her daughter to come out. She crawled inside, and the door swung shut behind her. Annoyed, she hollered at Mary to stop pranking her. She had only a small flashlight with her in the dark cupboard, and it started to flicker. She managed to get a hold of matches, and when she lit one, there was a ghost standing behind her. Fortunately, David opened the door and let her out. Sarah was visibly shaken and claimed that there was something going on, but David chalked it up to her wild imagination. Later on, David found out that the boyfriend had hanged himself. Sarah was distraught by the news, but they decided not to tell Lindsay about his death. While the whole family was sitting on the deck, Mary announced that they had forgotten to make dinner for the lady. Lindsay explained that Mary has an imaginary friend that she talks to at night. Mary suddenly hit Lindsay's face with a glass. Mary was sent to her room, where David scolded her. This was all strange behavior from the child, who was usually kind and upbeat. David saw a drawing by Mary depicting a man hanging from a noose. He showed the drawing to Sarah, who was shocked. She couldn't sleep that night and kept looking at the cupboard beside their bed. She washed her face in the bathroom, and the lights began to flicker. The doorknob started turning as if someone was trying to get in. It stopped, and Sarah opened the door. She found a trail of wet footprints leading up to the deck. Someone called her name and wrapped her in a white sheet. Mike saw her struggling and freed her. Sarah then confided in David that Mike had started acting strangely since he was given more time manning the boat. She started to believe that something was haunting them, and she pleaded with him to turn back before it was too late. But David was insistent on making it to their destination and dismissed her fears. One morning, Sarah saw Lindsay wordlessly walking out onto the deck. She then visited Mary in her room, but her daughter disappeared and ghostly hands began to touch her. Sarah woke up screaming. It was another nightmare. Mary walked into their room and proudly showed them the bloody tooth that her imaginary friend helped her pull out. Later, David informed her that he and Mike would be taking turns steering the ship through the night, so they'd make it to Bermuda tomorrow. That night, Sarah pulled out the boat's documents to learn more about its history. David began doing the same thing up in their room. She read newspaper clippings dating back to when the boat first sailed many years ago and discovered that its previous owners and their children died mysteriously at sea. There were also stories about a curse haunting the boat and causing all this misery. Meanwhile, David scoured the previous owners' logbooks and plotted their coordinates before they disappeared. He realized that all three previous owners and his family were heading to the same destination. Sarah also found a poem detailing the origin of the curse. In the 18th century, a woman who was found to be a witch was drowned and her children disappeared. Now she haunts the sea and claims other children's lives as revenge. This witch was the same dark entity that had been possessing the boyfriend and Mary, so she could take the family's souls. Finally, believing that something strange was happening to them, David told Mike to set a new course. He then went to Sarah, who confronted him about the boat's history. She was enraged that David never told her about the mysterious disappearances. He reasoned that all he cared about was their future, and he needed to get her away from the man she cheated on him with. Back in the interview room, Sarah explains to the detective that the witch who lost her children was the dark entity, and that she was never going to let Sarah's family go. But the detective still remains unconvinced. Back in the past, David and Sarah finally came to the conclusion that the witch was leading them to the same destination where she killed the previous owners. Suddenly, Lindsay walked into the room, panicking about Mary. They found the daughter convulsing inside her room. David went upstairs to tell Mike to call in a mayday so they could get rescued, but he discovered that Mike had wrecked the sails. He tried to attack David, and he and Sarah restrained Mike. The next morning, they discovered that they were essentially marooned because Mike had destroyed the radio and cell phones. They also ran out of gas, so they had no choice but to hope that a passing ship would help them. They locked Mike inside a room, and he was fully possessed by the witch, saying that they all cannot escape death because she was coming for them. That night, an apparition of her boyfriend appeared to Lindsay and led her upstairs to the deck. He was holding a noose, and Lindsay stepped closer to him. She was about to jump off the boat with the noose around her neck, but David got to her in time. Mike was later freed by the witch and came up behind David, knocking him out. He tied the couple up and threw the unconscious David overboard. He wrapped a noose around Sarah's head and threw her too. Luckily, Sarah was able to cut her bindings and climb aboard the ship again. She wrestled with Mike and was saved by David, who was still alive. He shot Mike with a harpoon gun, and his friend's body toppled overboard. Sarah found her daughters tied up inside the cupboard. They climbed to the deck where David was trying to steer them away from the witch. She guided the girls to the life raft, but the witch had already killed David. She began to attack Sarah, but she shot the witch with a flare gun, and then shot the propane tanks too, causing an explosion. In the present, Sarah tells the detective that the explosion threw her to the waves and separated her from her daughters. But at least, her daughters are now safe from the clutches of the witch. The detective agrees to let her have a few minutes with her children, but she talks to her lieutenant and tells him that if Sarah does not quit her delusions, she'll have her committed to a mental institution. She reviews the CCTV footage of Sarah inside the room for the past hours. It begins to glitch, and suddenly, it's no longer Sarah, but the witch on the footage. This means that the real Sarah died on the boat, and the witch impersonated her to get to Lindsay and Mary. The movie ends with the detective hearing gunshots and racing to the room where Sarah was being escorted by a police officer. The officer is now dead, and the witch has escaped through a broken window. The detective looks outside only to see a fierce storm raging. This is Daniel's CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.